be with you. A reading from the Holy Gospel according to John. At that time, Jesus revealed himself again to his disciples at the Sea of Tiberias. He revealed himself in this way. Together with Simon Peter, Thomas called Didymus, Nathanael from Cana in Galilee, Zebedee's sons, and 2 others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I am going fishing." They say to him, "We also will come with you." So they went out and got into the boat, but that night they caught nothing. When it was already dawn, Jesus was standing on the shore, but the disciples did not realize that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, have you caught anything to eat?" They answered him, "No." So he said to them, "Cast the net over the right side of the boat, and you will find something." So they cast it, and were not able to pull it in because of the number of fish. So the disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It is the Lord." When Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he took in his garment, for he was lightly clad, and jumped into the sea. The other disciple came in the boat, for they were not far from shore, only about 100 yards, dragging the net with the fish. When they climbed out on shore, they saw a charcoal fire with fish on it and bread. Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish you just caught." So Simon Peter went over and dragged the net ashore, full of 153 large fish. Even though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come, have breakfast." And none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they realized it was the Lord. Jesus came over and took the bread and gave it to them, and in like manner the fish. This was now the 3rd time Jesus was revealed to his disciples after being raised from the dead. When they had finished breakfast, Jesus said to Simon Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than this?" Simon Peter answered, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my lambs." He then said to Simon Peter a second time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Simon Peter answered him, "Yes, Lord, you know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Tend my sheep." Jesus said to him the 3rd time, "Simon, son of John, do you love me?" Peter was distressed that Jesus had said to him a 3rd time, "Do you love me?" And he said to him, "Lord, you know everything. You know that I love you." Jesus said to him, "Feed my sheep. Amen, amen, I say to you, when you were younger, you used to dress yourself and go where you wanted. But when you grow old, you will stretch out your hands, and someone else will dress you and lead you where you do not want to go." He said this, signifying by what kind of death he will glorify God. And when he had said this, he said to him, "Follow me." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Good morning. I'm thinking about having listened to the last 2 Sundays and this Sunday's readings. The first thing that comes to my mind is that The last 2 Sundays, we have been hearing about how Jesus, that he really rose from the dead, and trying to give you that understanding and that belief, and that the understanding of the apostles that at first didn't realize it and didn't accept it, or didn't comprehend it at first. Today we sort of move to a little different aspect, and it says, really the scriptures speak to us about how we are changed once we believe, once we accept Christ into our lives. And it starts right from the first reading from the Acts of the Apostles. We've been hearing about how Peter and some of the disciples had cured someone who was lame, and they were brought into the Sanhedrin. They were argued, told them they were in jail for a while, and then all of a sudden let them go. Told them not to do this. Then they did it again. Then they went back into jail. This is the reading that you heard today was the 3rd time that they were brought into jail, and they were brought before the Sanhedrin. It was like the big. It's like the big jury of the Jewish people. It was like, the Supreme Court, and they're telling them, "Don't you ever do this again?" And they're just looking at them and saying, "No." This is the same Peter, of course, that denied Jesus. This is the same Peter that was so weak and so unable to commit to the Lord, and all of a sudden now he's standing up proud and everything else and saying, "Yes, we're going to do this." One of the things that I'm amazed by this passage is that there's a passage, or there's a part of the passage that is missing from our presentation of it. In this passage, it says that the Sanhedrin told them not to do this again, and then it jumps to that. Then they felt very proud that they had done this. But there's a period, there's a phrase in there, a sentence or two in there that says that they were scourged. They were scourged, and then they left, and they were proud of that. They were excited that they had suffered for the Lord and have fallen in the same aspect that Christ has died. So that's what made them proud. Not that they only stood up, but they were scourged, and they were just proud that they suffered for the Lord. Now, I want you to think about that. Someone tells you that you're a Christian, and they say, "Well, I don't want you to do this anymore. You don't want to proclaim what your faith is about. And if you don't, I'm going to scourge you." Would you be happy about that? No. Well, all of us would kowtow to this. And the message here is a very strong and poignant message. It tells us that to stand up for the faith and to recognize that there is a connection with the Lord within this. There's a connection and understanding that God. Let's face it. We in our country, we don't have to stand up to our faith for anything. And I tell people all the time. I hear people say, "Oh, I went and visited my son, and he doesn't go to church, so I didn't go to church either because I was afraid of making waves." I always say, "Well, you missed an opportunity. You missed an opportunity to proclaim your faith, to exactly what the passages of the scriptures are telling us." This is a call to us to remind ourselves that if we are followers, we have to respond. Now, I want to also, the other thing too, of course, from the book of Revelations, it talks about the glory that occurs to those who give themselves over to the Lord, who make the Lord first in their lives. So we come to the gospel, and of course we have this appearance of Jesus at Lake Gennesaret. Well, the first thing I think of in this is we hear it several times. After the resurrection, we hear Peter and the apostles, they go off, and even while they knew Jesus, they go off, and the first thing I realize is that they're as bad a fisherman than I am. How many times do we hear in the gospel that they went out fishing and they caught nothing? They hardly did anything. These are guys who, before they met Jesus, this was a lively occupation. This is a wealthy occupation in those times. And they're really doing a poor job of it. after they met Jesus, which says to me that their lives have changed drastically by their relationship with Christ. That's what we should be looking at ourselves. Our life should be different. We should be different people. Like, the things that they're, so they go off and Peter says, oh, I have nothing to do. Let's go fishing. Okay, I like that idea. So they're out fishing and they don't catch a thing. Not one fish. Now, I don't know if you've been to Israel or not, but there's a little chapel where this is supposed to have occurred. And the guides will tell you, the chapel is there, and there's an artesian well that feeds into the lake right there. And it's famous for the fish spawning there. And you can see it from shore. You can see it from shore. So Jesus is standing there with these great fishermen, telling these great fishermen, hi, children. I love this part when he says children. Because, if you're raised from the dead, you'll be calling everybody children too, right? Because I know what's going on, folks. Children, So he says he responds to them with that understanding that, what has he done already? So when he looks at, to me, the scholars all turn around and say, well, okay, he sees these fish, everything. He said, have you caught anything? No, not a thing. Put your net over here. And so what do they catch? They catch so many that they can't even bring it in. I mean, they're barely bringing it in. So by the time they get over there to the shore, Jesus already has a fish cooking on a fire. What happened there? But the fact is I'm not real keen on having fish for breakfast anyway, but it's not a donut? Wait a minute, okay. I knew that would get you. Okay. The thing is that when they come and they recognize who Jesus is, they don't recognize him from the boat, because let's face it, he's in a glorified state. But they recognize him by his words and his actions. And that should be a response to us, how we recognize Christ in our lives and how we are changed in our lives. And the most important part of this passage, of course, is at the end when Jesus looks at Peter and he says, Peter, do you love me? And Peter looks at him and he says, yes, I do, Lord. And he asks him again, do you love me? Feed my sheep, tend my flock, tend my sheep. He tells them, he says he's really turning to us and he's saying, folks, words are cheap. I have all of these people that are going around so holy and, oh, I love the Lord, I love the Lord. And then they go out to their car after Mass and are the nastiest people you can get night out there on a Popka Vineland. They're cussing and cursing and all this stuff, because I know. I hear it. And I was like, oh, we love the Lord. Well, feed my sheep, for crying out loud. That's the message. It is a reminder to us is that, we can go around saying, oh, I love you, Lord, and I love you as long as you give me these things. But if I have to suffer, if I have to struggle, then I'm turning around, where are you, Lord? And that's not what happens in the Acts of the Apostles at the first reading. These apostles realize what the difference is. Jesus told them to feed their sheep. He told them to make certain that they give of themselves. We have a community here that calls us